Good morning. On behalf of the Virginia Grain Producers Association and the Virginia Soybean Association, welcome to a special virtual edition of the Virginia Grain and Soybean Annual Conference. My name is Rachel Gresham, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Virginia Soybean Association. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us for this year's virtual conference. We'll start off our time together hearing from a beloved speaker in Hokie, Dr. David Kohl, and end with the annual meetings for the Virginia Soybean Association and Grain Producers Association. For those of you who hang with us to the end of this morning's presentations, there will be a special door prize for two $200 Amazon gift cards sponsored by Access Seed and Fraser Quarry. A few housekeeping rules before we get started. Feel free to utilize the chat feature to the right of your screen to ask questions, as there will be interactive questions throughout Dr. Kohl's presentation, as well as time for Q&A at the end of his presentation. At this time, we want to recognize our sponsors for their support of this year's conference. Their support truly makes this event possible and shows strong interest in supporting agriculture industry and farmers in general, especially during this challenging time and unconventional year. This year's presentation sponsors include Virginia Department of Agriculture, Ag Risk Management, Carmuse, Nutrient Ag Solutions, Purdue Agribusiness, Virginia Farm Bureau Grain Marketing Division, the Manel Milling Company, and Old Dominion Grain. And our general sponsors for this year are Montague Farms, Rockydale Quarries, Crab Aviation, and Farm Credit. This year's door prize sponsors are Access Seed and Fraser Quarry. And most importantly, we would like to recognize the Virginia Corn Board, Virginia Small Grains Board, and Virginia Soybean Board for their annual support of this event and everything that both associations do. Thank you again for all the support of this conference. Before we get started with our featured presenter, we'll pause for a word from one of our sponsors, the Virginia Farm Bureau Grain Marketing Division.
We've been with Farm Bureau for many years and met Robert Harper originally, and when he started telling us how he could help us to market our crops, having their insight and market analysis when deciding when to book, when to sell, and where to take our crops to, we realized that that was really going to be a good benefit for us.
We're unable to harvest all of our crops without first having to get some grain delivered to the mills. We run out of storage, and so they come in handy getting the trucks here.
Robert and Josie are definitely some of the best partners we have on our farm.
Good morning. I'm Leslie Mosley, the Executive Director of the Virginia Grain Producers Association, and I have the privilege of introducing today's feature presenter. Dr. David Kohl received his MS and PhD degrees in agriculture economics from Cornell University. For 25 years, Kohl was professor of agriculture, finance, and small business management and entrepreneurship in the Department of Agriculture and Applied Economics at Virginia Tech, where he is currently professor emeritus in the Agriculture and Applied Economics Department. Dr. Kohl has traveled over 9 million miles throughout his professional career. He has conducted more than 6,000 workshops and seminars for agriculture. He has published 4 books and over 2,100 articles in financial and business-related topics in popular publications such as Corn and Soybean Digest. He has received 11 major teaching awards while teaching over 10,000 students and 25 major extension and public service awards from Virginia Tech, Cornell University, and state and national organizations. Dr. Kohl is a 2-time recipient of the prestigious American Agriculture Economics Association's Outstanding Teaching Award. Kohl is one of only 5 professors in the 100-year history of the association to receive the award twice. He received the Governor's Award for his distinguished service to Virginia agriculture, the youngest recipient to ever receive the award. Dr. Kohl was recognized as one of 30 leaders who are the brains behind innovative business management and economic information that agriculture uses today. He has also been named one of 7 economists and bankers who challenge the status quo. As facilitator of the United States Farm Financial Standards Task Force and member of the Canadian Agriculture Financial Standards Task Force, Dr. Kohl was one of the leaders in establishing guidelines for the standardized reporting and analysis of agriculture producers' financial information on a national and international basis. The Kohl Agribusiness Center has been established in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Virginia Tech in honor of his long-term commitment to practical teaching, research, and extension. In 2017, Dr. Kohl was inducted into the Virginia Tech College of Agriculture and Life Sciences Hall of Fame. Kohl is currently president of AgriVisions LLC, a knowledge-based consulting business providing cutting-edge programs to leading agriculture organizations worldwide. He is also a business coach and part owner of Homestead Creamery, a value-added dairy business in the Blue Ridge Mountains. On a more personal note, Dave enjoys playing basketball and likes most sports, farms, dogs, and covered bridges. He dislikes lazy students, administrative bureaucracies, and paperwork. I can't blame him. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Kohl.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thanks for that long introduction. I forgot about all those things over the years. Well, hey, I'd like to welcome you from snowy Blacksburg, Virginia. We got about 5-6 inches of snow. The roads are real treacherous here this morning, and Lish and I, we slipped in and probably going to slip out. And it's always great to come back and be with this conference. I've addressed it many times, and I really appreciate all the support that I've gotten over the years from the state of Virginia, and so it's great to be back with you. Hey, the topic of today is managing through the black swan cycle, and I've got 3 components for today's program. Number one, I want to take you up 30,000 foot, and we're going to kind of look at some of the things that are going to be shaping the agricultural industry. And then second, I want to talk about the importance of this management mindset. Of course, we saw that in the video here, and I think it's going to be imperative in managing our businesses here in the decade of the 2020s. And then, of course, at the end, if you'll submit your questions throughout my discussion, at the end, Connor and I, we're going to kind of answer some of the questions, and I've actually got 4 or 5 questions that I'm frequently getting. I think this month we've done 19 different webcasts, and so one of the things is I'll bring in some of those questions as well. So I guess everything's ready to go, and my technical assistant here, Alicia, is giving me the thumbs up, and so let's move into the presentation. One of the things I thought, you know, we've done about 135 of these since I was shut down last March, and it's real interesting. I've been able to do these throughout the United States, Canada, but throughout the world, and I've actually been able to get better touch of what's going on through the webcast. But we would like to know where you're located. If you could put that in your chat box. And then the second question right along with that, did you get snow last night? And they're calling for wind chill factors up here in Blacksburg. Any of you ever went to Virginia Tech, you know what I'm talking about 5 below tonight. And so I'm going to feed the cows. And so if you could put in your chat, in the chat box where you're located. And again, one of the things is there will be a little bit of a delay on this, but I'd like to find out where you're from. And so if you could do that, but I'm going to go on and lecture while you're putting those in. Oh, got Fredericksburg, no snow. Okay, Glenn, hey, you're the lucky one there. Hey, you say, oh, Kate from Botetourt County, Henrico. Okay. Suffolk got 2 inches of snow. Gee, got a dusting. Connor, I'm originally from upstate New York. A dusting was usually about 15 to 20 inches. Okay, once you've got less than 2 inches. Okay, well, hey, I'm going to start my lecture as you kind of put it in here. Here's the views from Cyberville 2021 and beyond. One of the things is, any of you have heard me speak before, one of the things that's real interesting, I always talked about black swans. Well, we got one, and that, of course, is the pandemic, and it's currently ongoing. You're usually going to get one of these about every decade. And then you'll get two babies. A baby will be like a hurricane or, a disease type of event. And one of the things that we find about black swans, they'll accelerate change in the consumers, society, and business. And while the black swan is disrupting and challenging, it creates opportunities. One of the things that we noticed in our creamery business, the home delivery picked up, ice cream sales shot through the roof as families came out and enjoyed ice cream. But one of the things that this black swan is going to do, it's going to accelerate economic and financial divide. This thing called business IQ is going to be very, very important, and financial IQ. And it's not only going to be important for your business, but it's also going to be important for the household as well. Here's a couple of things that I really see in this economic and financial divide. I just wrote an article here this morning, got in the office a little bit early after feeding cows. One of the things that you're going to see is economic volatility, but volatility in extremes. That is pertaining to prices, but it's also pertaining to cost. One of the things that you're going to have to realize, we're going to have inflation creep, particularly in expenses and in machinery. And again, some of this volatility will be in extremes. Here's the other element that's going to be extremely important. Two buckets. Manage the things that you can control, manage around the uncontrollables. Hey, we can't control what happens out of China or election results. One of the things that we can control is things in our business, whether it pertains to production, finance, marketing, etc. And so what I find the real good managers do, they try to develop strategies around the uncontrollables, but zero in on the things that you can control in the business. Also, this decade is going to be one where you're going to have to be adaptable, innovative, flexible, and focus. In other words, flexible, focus, and adapt, that would be FFA, a great organization. But then you're going to have to focus and follow the process. It's also going to be a decade of management transition, not only in your businesses, but in the agribusiness sector, the agri-lending sector. And so again, aligning up with new people that are going to be serving you. But I think it's going to be very, very entrepreneurial. In other words, kind of thinking outside the box, aligning up with the markets, whether it's here, in the state or whether it's globally. It's going to be real, real critical. Now, that being said, let's go up 30,000 foot now. And one of the things that I would like to look at is examine global macroeconomic risk in 5 buckets. Here we go. And this is one of the things that's going to be real critical, particularly for grain growers where we export a lot of our products, whether it be beans, corn, or, we feed it through the pork, poultry, et cetera, et cetera. After World War II, we were in about 5-6 decades of globalization, which the United States was the power player. Now, what's interesting is this. While we were into hyper-globalization, particularly 2007, 2012, in that period, I was down in Williamsburg addressing your conference. We were right in the midst of the super cycle created by the emerging nations, the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and then it was the KIM-Ts, South Korea, Indonesia, Mexico, and Turkey. Those nations' purchasing power parity from 95 to 2017 increased 2 times. And boy, what did they demand? Food, fiber, and fuel. And it was right in the wheelhouse of agriculture. While as the rich nations like Japan, Europe, United States only increased their purchasing power 44%. So all shifted around 2008, 2009 with the economic crisis. And then it was accentuated around the mid-teens as governments, businesses, and consumers, not only here in the United States, but around the world, Europe. One of the things that's happened is they have been contracting and moving to deglobalization. Now, if you've been following Davos, President Xi and some of the other folks are saying, we're moving away from deglobalization to globalization. Well, it's going to be interesting to see if they walk their talk. So where 1 out of every $5 of net farm income comes through export markets, this trend is going to be real critical. And I'm just going to tell you right up front, and hope I get some questions on this. Don't bet your farm on trade with China. In other words, they can giveth, they can taketh away. Now, the other thing that we're going to have to watch is this whole supply marketing chains. Boy, we found the Achilles heel, whether it was the shutdown of some of our technology, agricultural businesses, manufacturing type of businesses. We had too much concentration, too much power in the hands of too few. So now what's happening throughout the world? You've got Made in China 2025. Same thing is happening in India, Europe, and here in the United States. And so as this thing kind of balances itself out, we're going to see more and more disruption. Now, going to the US and global economy, some of the economists are saying, well, we had a V-shaped recovery. Others are saying it's K-shaped. I say it's a Nike swoosh with a jagged W. But as we look at the world economy, and this is going to create tension, you're going to see certain parts of our economy only come back to 50 to 75%. For example, look at myself. We've done about 135 of these web and Zoomcasts. Normally, I'd be on an airliner, I'd be in a hotel. They are not getting my business. Granted, the airlines are getting people to come back, but it's the wrong people. The people that are not profitable, not the business people like myself. And so you look at your sports complex. Will they ever come back? It's going to be a good question. And then you got others, 125%. Amazon. Look at Walmart developing their fulfillment centers, et cetera, et cetera. And so you're going to see a very, very disjointed recovery worldwide. Now, let's go to trade agreement uncertainty. This is one this association is really going to have to watch for. Let's go to Australia, late August. The Australian scientists pointed at the Chinese and basically said, you know, the bug broke out there and it spread throughout the world. And by the way, let's give some perspective on this. In 1970, only 370 million people traveled via airliner. In 2019, that was 2.2 billion. See how this bug spread so fast? Well, when the Australian scientists said that, all of a sudden, you know what China said? Okay, we're going to put a tariff on your barley. We're going to put a tariff on your other ag products. Wine, 200% tariff. What didn't they put a tariff on? Iron ore, because they needed it in manufacturing and building their infrastructure. About 2 weeks ago, 300 million people in China were without power. Why? Because China would not accept the coal out of Australia to fire up their electrical plants. So the party basically says, citizens, suck it up. See, the rich nations are watching this real closely. And again, China is playing a lot of power plays out here. Also, China has been involved with their Silk and Belt Road Initiative. Now, our Main Street media here, they're so focused on drama and all this, they aren't even picking up on this. But since 2013, China has invested over $1 trillion around the world in 68 countries, emerging Europe, Brazil, Argentina, some of our major ag competitors, building infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. Now their focus is on vaccine and medical innovation in some of our third world countries to expand their power. If you heard me speak in Williamsburg a few years ago, I said China is attempting to become the leading military and economic power by 2040. They backed that up to 2027 to 2032. So what you're going to see is trade agreement uncertainty, and who is at the point, which industry is at the point of the spear? It is agriculture. So again, this is another case for this volatility. The other thing that's really concerning is the central bank and government support for agriculture. $2 billion a day worldwide. We're between $40 and $50 billion last year. This is not sustainable. And I call it the one-off risk. I was in a meeting the other day, socially distanced, with 7 grain producers. I'm not going to say where it was, but one of the producers, all of a sudden, his mobile device goes ding, 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 and all of a sudden he gets $126,000 of pure profit from the government. This is not sustainable, and we got to be careful of making long-term decisions on government checks. Also, what's going to be the duration of the support? We've got these new stimulus packages coming out. How are other segments of the society going to be looking at agriculture? Who gets the money first? And also, which country gives up their government support first, because this impacts our global competitiveness. But here's your bottom line: when government writes checks, government encroaches. So you can expect to see higher local, state, and federal taxes, also possibility of wealth tax, and we're going to see more swagger in the regulators. So these are 5 areas, 5 buckets of risk that I see as some of these uncontrollables that we're probably going to have to manage around. Now, I speak of Asia. Let's go back to 1990. I was teaching at Virginia Tech. Many of you that were, might be on here probably had my classes in farm management, small business, and problem solving and ag finance. At that time, China was only 2% of the world GDP. Let's fast forward. It says 14% on my PowerPoint, but it's actually, I got the latest data, 16.8%. Initially, they gained market share from Japan and Western Europe. What's interesting now, the focus is in the United States. And how are they doing it? It's with China's dual circulation strategy. This is a complex slide, but it's got 2 focuses. Where the world centered around the United States on globalization after World War II for about 6 decades, China wants to shift that to the Asian region where they're the power player. And think about Asia, 30% of the world's buying power is in the Asian region. The second part of their strategy is to emulate the United States, where the United States, 70% of our economy is driven around consumption. In China right now, it's 55.5%. They want to go to 70%. So you're going to see more regional trade agreements. And of course, this puts me to my next slide. About 2.5 months ago, when we were watching election results and maybe some sporting events, over the weekend, I was watching this trade agreement coming out of Asia called the RCEP, or the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, 15 Asian countries, which China is part of it. And you notice it says regional. It's 15 countries, 2.7 billion people, about 25.8 trillion on an $80 trillion world economy, but global trade value, 12.5 trillion. Of course, the United States, Canada, and Mexico ratified the USMCA, 500 million people. You can see the world GDP, but it's 7.8 trillion as far as global trade value. Now, here's what you need to watch. Get off your technology. Pay close attention to me here on this one. Will Secretary Vilsack and the administration attempt to enter the TPP, or the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement? Secretary Vilsack, when he was in the Obama administration, was in favor of this. Canada is currently part of it. And I've been doing a bunch of webcasts in Canada in the past 9 months. They're glad they're part of it. And one of the things is it's 500 million people, 11 trillion on the $80 trillion world economy, but the 7.6 trillion as far as global trade value. Will we do one-off trade agreements, or will we enter the TPP? This association needs to watch that very, very closely. And from my standpoint, I think it's a great blocking strategy to China, but not only a blocking strategy, but also an offensive strategy. that I think is very, very critical. So that one right there, watch very, very closely. Now, I've been on, we've done what, 4 or 5 of these webcasts already this week. And as I told the upper Midwest producers, we set grain marketing back 5 years. Why? Because I had a soybean producer say the other day, he says, boy, I left a lot of money on the table by following a marketing plan. This sets psychology back 5 years, and we had the perfect convergence of events for a run up of prices on the grain side. We had government stimulus checks. We had China rebuilding its pork and protein sector. We had adverse weather in South America, and then pumping out all these stimulus checks, it's devaluing the dollar. So it basically, one of the things that it did, it gave us some of the best of times in the grain market. Now, one of the things that I would tell you, you better watch your brethren over on the livestock side, because what's happened there with this concentration, and I call it cannibalization, too much power with too fewer players, it basically shut down some of our livestock aspects. And the other thing, it's allowing these non-meat, non-dairy alternatives to come in. And I've just got to tell you, I am very, very concerned about this one, because there's a CEO of one of the non-meat alternatives said, I'd like to drive that cow out of business by 2035. They've got money, they got power, they got influence. And one of the things that they want to do is enter the Chinese market in the plant-based alternatives. So we're going to have to watch this very, very closely. I talked about swagger and regulation. I'll come back and talk about labor and immigration in a moment. Right now is the moment. Radar screen for 2021. And I hope this gives us some of the questions here at the end, where Connor and I can kind of go back and forth. But number one, minimum wage. I'm speaking of myself, not for the organization. I'm very concerned about this raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. A couple of things. It's going to encourage a lot of automation. People are going to go on the sidelines. The second thing is it's going to encourage business consolidation. This is going to be detrimental to small business and agricultural business, but the big Walmarts, one of the things is they can absorb some of these costs, but even Walmart, if you look at their fulfillment strategy unveiled in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, what are they going to do? They're going to automate. I'm very, very concerned, because it's not 15, it's 15 plus fringe benefits, and it raises wages all across the board. And may I suggest to you, go to YouTube, go to Milton Friedman. He was a Nobel economist. I had the pleasure of having him at Cornell in my doctorate program. He guest lectured there. He talks about this minimum wage. This one right here could be an Achilles heel for small business. The second thing that we've got to examine is this oil and energy complex. It's being unraveled. Now, after 9/11, the administration at that time said we want to become energy independent in 25 years. Well, here's the good news. We did it in 10 years. How did we do it? The big E called ethanol, solar, wind, fracking. And one of the things is we are now the #1 energy producer. Canada is 4, Mexico is 8. We got the top 10 teams, or 3 of the top 10 teams in North America. And you know what this did? Gave us 128 months without a recession, longest ever. It gives consumer confidence. But for agriculture, where 8 out of every $10 we spend is somehow linked to energy, expect now, as we unravel this, you're going to see more and more volatility out here. Also, it plays in the hands of OPEC and Russia. And what did they do? They cut back on supply. Have you noticed at the gas pump how our fuel prices are going up? Everybody says people are driving more, which I'll agree. But we're going to have to watch this closely. Also, you're starting to see technology movement toward the electric vehicle. I was on a deal the other day with the Minnesota corn growers. They were saying how ethanol industry is actually extending the mileage on the electric vehicles. So there's some innovations coming along. But as I wrote in the article here about an hour and a half ago, 74% of the electrical components are actually made in China. And again, we're playing right into China's hands. So again, this is something in the agriculture complex we're going to have to watch closely. On taxes, I mentioned the increase of income taxes. Boy, tax management 2021, 2022 is going to be real critical, but don't be surprised we see a wealth tax. In other words, reducing some of the limits on taxation. Very, very critical for agriculture. And again, we had to see increased taxes because you just can't continue to write checks. The big thing that we're starting to see is deurbanization, people moving out of Seattle, Portland, LA, New York, Atlanta. Around here in Blacksburg, it's just amazing who our new neighbors are. But it's very important that you have the broadband internet. And by the way, with deurbanization, they often bring their philosophies to your area. So this is kind of interesting. But I do see more and more swagger with the regulators, environment, food safety, etc., labor, even in the banking industry if we happen to have a hiccup. So this is what's on the radar screen. Now, here is a trend that I think you'll see accelerate. By the way, Bill Henley, you're in here. My goodness, it's a lot of the folks that I've seen. I'm just looking over here in the chat box. Hey, nice to see all my former students and different things like that. But here's a major mega trend that I see kind of coming in the decade of 2020, soil and water health. And let's be blunt. A lot of the bad bugs, by the way, this century is going to be defined by biology. Last century was the nuclear. Now, here's one of the things that I see coming down the pike. What is it? Over 20% of the soils in China is unhealthy. Half of the water in northern China is so nasty you can't even wash in it. And so one of the big emphasis you're going to see is on soil and water health. Healthy soil, healthy plant, healthy animal, healthy human, healthy environment. And this is the way we can really bridge the non-farm and the farm public. I see payments coming, being shifted, particularly mid-decade toward this area. And one of the things that you're going to see, of course, Nutrium is one of the sponsors of the program. And by the way, a shout out, thanks to all the sponsors of the program here today. I do a lot of programs with Eric, the weather guy, Eric Snodgrass. And one of the things Eric talks about, weather in extremes. And so a lot of the weather in extremes comes back to your soil and your water health. Major mega trend coming on board. Now, land values, I see them holding. Low interest rates, the TINA effect. There is no alternative, and lenders have been able to do the refi, restructure, people having cash flow, working capital issues. But here's a big element, my generation, called the baby boomer farmer. We're going to invest for another decade, and this is going to hold resistance playing on land values, coupled with the rural property renaissance. This says 80%, think about 80% of the U.S. farm balance sheet is in farmland. And so this is a very, very positive element for that farmland. Now, the 79 and 88% rule, Connor, I'm not going to discuss it. We'll just see if somebody asks. I'm setting up a teaser question. And so I'm just going to jump over that, and we'll see if anybody asks me what the 79, 88% rule is. Now, I'd like to know, and I'd like to have you talk in here, because I don't want to be a gloom and doomster. There were some positives that came out of 2020. I'd like to have you put in the chat box, what's one positive? It could be business, could be family, could be your personal life. One of the things that I found was I got a chance to farm, and farm every day. Also got a chance to get sleep. because I wasn't fighting airlines and hotels and rental cars and cancellations and all those. And so sometimes what you got to do is see uh, this pandemic as a positive. And I'd like to have you put in the chat room because we're on from 9 to noon. Everybody says, "Will you stay around to noon?" Well, you want to get your prize. Well, one of the things that I'd like to see is what's one of the positives you had about 2020? So I'm going to go on and lecture. You can put those in the chat box. Bill Henley, I expect you to give me one positive, okay? I'm going to shout you out here. Grayson, also, would you, put that one in? So, hey, let's move on and let's talk about farm economics. If you really look at it, farm economics. I use FinBin data, the University of Minnesota, and they're in 22 states. So this is just not Minnesota data. And one of the things that you will see is this. From 96 right on to 2019, there's also top 20 and a bottom 20. And here's a danger. You'll notice from about 2007 to 2013, you'll notice the bottom 20 started making money. And that's going to happen this year and next year because the government stimulus checks. That's a danger because usually when the top 20 start or bottom 20 starts making money, you're going to have problems in the industry. And I can see, boy, my goodness, we got baby number 6. That boy, kicking them out there. Okay, that was a positive. Okay, I'm just kind of hitting there. It's kind of interesting seeing some of the chat. But one of the things is always remember when the bottom 20%, bottom third of any industry starts making money, you're usually going to have problems 2 or 3 years later. Now, what are some of the characteristics of the high 20%? Number one, they'll usually have this high business IQ, which I'll get into. They have a good way of building and preserving working capital. But one of the things that I'll notice, while they'll have modest financial leverage, they have strong production and operational efficiencies. And they know how to turn an asset, and they do that with margin, which gives them ROA. Contrast that to the low 20%. Often they'll have higher equity, and oftentimes higher equity results in passive management in some cases. I call it where we're kind of playing it late in the football game where we play prevent defense. I think it's one of the worst strategies going out there. You play sometimes and you end up losing. Also, they will refinance and restructure usually 2 or 3 times every 10 or 12 years. Weak production and operational efficiencies, and then they'll have the lower liquidity, lower business IQ. So that's your top 20. There's your bottom 20. Now, the management mindset. I guest lectured over at Virginia Tech last fall. About 7% of the classes were in person. So I went in, Dr. Alex White and my daughter-in-law, Rachel Kohl. I went in and lectured in their senior management classes. And again, as I told the students, how a producer approaches a lender tells me a lot about their management mindset. Producer A will come in and say, hey, how do I compare? But they'll often know how they compare because they'll do a trend analysis. Hey, what are others doing? In other words, how do I benchmark this other person? And they'll think longer term, think out on the horizon. Whereas that producer B, is the lender going to finance me? Am I going to survive another year? Sometimes they'll play the victim card or the know-it-all card. I don't need to attend any of these types of things. So I told the class over at Tech, in school, you get the lesson first, and then you get the test occasionally. Remember, I used to give pop quizzes at my 8 o'clock class. In the real world, you get the test first, and then you get the lesson. Now, I put producers into 3 buckets. It's kind of like going through a stoplight. Actually, Dr. Alex White, I came in with him. We came up the mountain slip sliding. He had a early morning class, so I just rode in with him. We had to go through stoplights this morning here in Blacksburg. You take the green lights. The green lights, they're very adaptive and proactive, but they'll follow the 5% rule. They sweat the small stuff and they try to get efficient before they get bigger. But they'll spend 5 to 10% of their time planning. uh, and strategizing. But one of the things that they're notorious for, they execute on the plan and then they monitor it. They're very, very process oriented, but boy, here's a big one that's gaining steam amongst the producers under 45 to 50 years of age. But I'll see it with some of my senior generation as well. They know the power of advisory teams, and with Zoomcast and all this, your advisory team can be anywhere in the United States of America. That's one of the fastest growing trends that I'm seeing amongst the more progressive greens. And by the way, the greens are not necessarily just, big businesses. The yellows, they've been successful because of equity, and the equity is appreciated, but they'll have a history of profitability and cash flow problems. You know what the other thing is? Preparing the next generation, they don't do it. They wait too late, and then they set the wrong skill set. And they attempt to get bigger before they get better. And here's the other thing. They'll come to the conference like this to try to find the magic silver bullet or the next big thing. I'm not allowed in the state of Kentucky because I shot my mouth off at the wrong place, wrong time, saying that hemp was not going to be a magic silver bullet for the ag industry. Again, let's put it this way. I'll still stand by it. Now, few people have done very well with it, but everybody thought they were going to just make that is a classic. You follow one of those magic silver bullet bunny trails, and one of the things that will happen is oftentimes it'll run you in the ditch. Now, the Reds, guess what? They got their wish this year. One of the things that's real interesting, the prices came back, the government stimulus checks came back. They'll stay in business for another 3, 4, or 5 years. Now, think about these three buckets. And again, one of the things is, again, which bucket do we fit in? Now, here comes a tool for the 20s. Matter of fact, we're using it. A lot of lenders are using it. A lot of producers are using it. It's called the Business Management IQ. For any of you who've taken my courses over the years, we alluded to this, but finally, Alicia and I and Angela and Paula, one of the things is our team developed kind of a way that you can size up your management by just asking questions. It's 15 questions. Do you know your cost of production? And on the webcast this week, you know what they said? It's not only knowing the cost of production, but which ones influence it very, very quickly. Do you have your goals? Do you do a projected cash flow with a financial sensitivity analysis? Do you attend educational events like this? And what's your attitude? I tell this story, and I've told it 150 times. Poor Alicia here in the office has to listen to this every time. In Fort Wayne, Indiana, I was at a crop livestock conference a couple springs ago, had breakfast with a large animal vet. He was 84 years of age. Boy, he was opinionated. And I invited him to my session later in the day, and he came and sat in the front row, and he came up afterwards, and he thanked me and said, great seminar, but he said, I'm totally disappointed in your business IQ. Well, he floored me. What's the problem? He says line number 15 should be line number 1. He says, as a large animal vet, and by the way, everyone that's a crop consultant out here or a livestock consultant or working with the industry, he says, if I worked with the producers that were indifferent and reactive, they were constantly looking for the magic silver bullet, and I was out there at 2 o'clock in the morning on emergency work. Whereas the proactive people, they were incrementally trying to get better. And he said, boy, they were so much more fun to work with. Now, I had to come back to him, and I basically said, well, sir, I saved the best for last. We both chuckled. But these are the 15 questions that you can ask your business. Now, one of the things is, once you complete it, what are 3 areas you want to continue? What are 3 areas you want to improve? Now, is everything okay? Okay. Remember the rule of 3. It's called the Babe Ruth rule. Of course, Hank Aaron just passed away. I still say he holds the record. I'm not a big fan of the steroid guys. But one of the things that's real interesting, you never want more than 3 because it becomes too complex. Now, how can you use this tool? It's a great screener for attitude. If I ever work with a farm business or a business in general, If they aren't willing to do it, it's just a waste of my time. Okay. Each family member, business partner, spouse fills it out separately, because one of the things that will happen invariably, you will get a domineering family member that tries to control everything. Great communication tool, internally and externally, but it's a great way to measure progress over the years. And by the way, in Nebraska, I had a grain producer come up to me, a young guy, and he and his spouse, and they came up and he says, well, my score has increased 5 points over the past 3 years. That doesn't sound like a whole lot. And I says, well, did your profits increase? His profits increased 4 times. Now, I'm not going to guarantee your profits are going to increase 4 times, but it's a tool for the management process. Now, this is an example of a family that filled this out. And I've actually worked with this family. And you know what was real interesting? The husband, he rated himself 53, the wife 39, daughter 38, accountant 40, and then of course the lender 35. But you can kind of see the 3 areas they wanted to prove, continue, and the 3 areas they wanted to improve. You'll notice that crop production KPIs kept popping up. That was one of the things they really wanted to zero in on. Got to tell you about this situation. You know who didn't fill it out? The son. You know what the son said? I'm involved with production. I don't need to be involved. That was an potentially Achilles blowout in this business situation. So you can use it for attitude. You can really use it to prioritize your priorities. And it's a great way to measure progress. Now, one of the things that we did, there's this young man, Ben Isaac, University of Kentucky. His dad is Dr. Steve Isaac, Ag Econ professor there. He was in a lending school down at Clemson as a sophomore. And one of the things that I asked Ben, this would be a great research study. Well, guess what? He took me up on it. And so he used the Kentucky Farm Business Management Association data, took 4 years of it. And so he could have a nice trend analysis from 2016 to 2019. And he applied the business IQ scores. They filled out the business IQs to the data. You know what he found? People with the bottom third of scores carried about 3 times more debt. Concerning profitability, they were much more profitable, the top versus the bottom. You'd say, well, my goodness, 3.16, 2.25. That's not very, very profitable, but you got to remember 2016, 2019, well, were some struggling reset years in agriculture. Look at your net farm income. Net farm income substantially higher for the top third versus the bottom third. But one of the things that's real interesting, your lenders out here, they really watch and examine the coverage ratio. For the top third, it was 114%. The bottom third, you want 100% to cover your debt service. They couldn't even cover their debt service. But here's one of my favorite ratios, the operating expense revenue ratio. For the top third, it was 68%. That means a 32% margin after you take interest depreciation out. Bottom third, 90%. And by the way, he applies statistical test, and guess what? 95% confidence on this. So this business IQ does have a relationship to the financial outcomes. And we're going to hopefully consider Ben going on to grad school. It's where he can expand this study. So again, tool for the time. Hey, got to ask you this one. And you can put it in the chat room here. And what was your biggest accomplishment for your business in 2020? You know what one of our biggest accomplishments was? We use Eric, the weather guy. One of the things, it's one of those things that using Eric to pinpoint the weather down to our farm business. And so that's one of the things that we do. So put in your chat room, what was one of your biggest accomplishments? Now, let's move on and talk about the Feisty 15. Okay, problems your business should have. Okay, and one of the things is on the problems your business should have. Okay, I've kind of twisted this around just a little bit. Your business pays a lot of income taxes. You know what that says? You made money. And there's a fine balance between paying income taxes and deductions. And very few businesses go broke paying income tax, uh, but sometimes trying to get the maximum deductions, sometimes we load up on unproductive assets. Your lender wants you to loan you money. That usually means you got strong profits and cash flow. But remember, before you do any expansion, remember, try to get your working capital 25% of operating expenses. Here's another one. You have growth frustrations. You can't grow fast enough. Always remember, in a growth situation, overestimate your capital and time by 25%. Your term debt to your EBITDA, try to keep your term debt, say you had $1 million of term debt, and then your net farm income plus interest, taxes, and depreciation, say it was 200,000, that would be a 5-to-1 ratio. Try to keep that less than 5-to-1. Here's a big one that we're using now. Take your debt service, that's your principal and interest on operating capital, and what you do is you divide that into working capital. Try to keep working capital at least 5-to-1. 5-to-1. Working capital is just not cash. It's assets that can be turned to cash. Here's another one. Everyone wants to work for you. Be careful on this one. Select the right people. There's a great book for you to read. Okay? One of the things is Good to Great by Jim Collins. And the whole premise is get the right people on the bus, kick the wrong ones off, get the right people in the right seat. But Coach K down at Duke University adds to this. You got to have the right bus driver. The bus driver's got to know the directions. And then you got to have plan B, C, and D. Here's another one. Be a work culture magnet. In other words, sometimes compensation's more than salary. And again, it can be the little financial factors that makes your working culture a culture type of magnet. Another element is your business has excess cash sitting around. Remember, cash is queen, like a chessboard. The queen's there to block adversity, but take opportunity as purchases and acquisitions come along. Here's another one. Many of you are in a family business. And always remember that senior generation, ask them what they're going to retire on, and they've got to have at least 50% of their retirement income coming from outside the business, Social Security, retirement plans, etc. I find that is very imperative in transferring the business. Here's another one. You have time for family and friends, and neighbors don't. Remember the 2,500, 500-hour rule. Try not to work more than 2,500 hours a year in your business, 250 10-hour days. And by the way, when you're doing grain and everything, you're going to go 24/7, in those critical times. And try not to spend more than 500 hours, that's 50 10-hour days, outside the farm business. Here's a big one that'll test your ego. You could walk away from the business for 1 month and it'll function without you, okay? Sometimes producers say it functions better. That means you've done a good job of getting the right people and delegating both responsibility and accountability. I've hit this one here. You've left money on the table marketing this year's crop. Usually it means you followed the process. The younger generation, I'll hear this from the older generation. Younger generation spends too much time in the office on the computers and the books. Sometimes that's where the money's made, but I got to give the older generation credit. Younger generation kind of needs that to be out there, getting a little dirt on them, getting a little grease on them, et cetera, et cetera. Here's a big one. You spend money for a facilitator and a team of advisors for your transition and your estate plan. Again, if you don't make an investment there will be 3 winners: Uncle Sam, accountants, and lawyers. And so it's like the old Fram oil filter, pay up or pay a little bit later on. The other element is your neighbors comment you spend too much time in seminars and conferences. You've heard it all before. let's put it this way. Sometimes, like today, you take things from the back of your head, you put them up on the front burner. Here's the other one. Even though you're financially successful, you spend time refining your B plan. I heard a business owner a few years ago say, I don't need to do a business plan. We're successful. We're financially successful. Remember, your biggest mistakes are often made in the best of times. Here's a big one. You don't have to bring your personal checkbook to the business board meeting. Boy, that is a big one that if you can do that, you know you're successful. We've all been there and done that. And then in Virginia, I'll see it, but I see it in agriculture. Mom and dad and grandpa and grandma are upset that those tough questions you're asking in developing the business plan. Now, let's conclude down because I want to keep it right on time. I did my 30th TPAP. It's the Texas Ag Executive Program at Texas A&M. And what's really, really interesting, I've been involved with for 30 years. This year was cyber. We had over 200 attend my session. And I asked them to come up with their 3 BMPs, best management practices. And what was really interesting, number one, they listed out their written goals, business, family, and personal. They said that's one of the things the pandemic really did make them reassess their goals, both their family, and personal goals. Many of them are developing KPI scorecards. And just pass this along in production, finance, marketing, operational efficiencies, and break evens. Matter of fact, KPIs is one of the elements that I am seeing across the country. They stuck to a marketing plan, even though they left money on the table. Many of them were developing SOPs, standard operation procedures, and delegating responsibility and accountability. And then many of them were working on a written transition plan, organizational structure, employee handbooks. But what was real interesting here is all businesses are in constant transition out here. And so what they were doing is they were concentrating. And by the way, a written transition plan, you're not going to do overnight. It's going to take, time, to do it. And oftentimes it will take 2 to 3 years. Now, one of the things that's real interesting is this. I want to kind of end the deal on what is the most enjoyable aspect you enjoy being involved with agriculture. And again, what I'd like to do is have you put that into your chat room. And again, we'd like to have some questions as well. And one of the things that as we move, Connor and I go into question and answer, I've got questions that I've been asked this week, and so I'm going to kind of incorporate some of those in, Connor. But again, one of the things, you're putting some good quotes in here, and I'm kind of seeing those. By the way, China's debt's increasing. Yep, Keith, great to see you. One of the things is we're going to have to watch that really, really closely. And one of the things that's going to be real interesting is to see how fast their economy is going to grow. That could potentially be their Achilles heel, but their authoritarian economy, and so, authoritarian government. And so one of the things that they can do is do some quick shifts there. But China is becoming kind of concerned about their debt levels. But again, that could influence the value of the dollar to the yuan out there, Keith. And I know you work those international markets. And so watching that one real closely. But one of the things, China's also stockpiling some of its commodities. So we've got to watch that one out there as well. So, hey, I'm down to 35 seconds. So, Connor, we're going to go back to question and answer. And I hope I get some good questions in. And I've got 4 or 5 questions that I've been asked this week. So, Connor, are you out there? and we'll kind of go back and forth here.
Yes. Hey, Dr. Kohl, how are you? Thank you so much for sharing with us today. You're always a crowd favorite, and we are so grateful that you could join us today. So now, like Dr. Kohl said, we are going to turn to the Q&A section of the presentation. And I guess, do you think you feel comfortable with the explanation or talking about Keith's question with China's debt, growing debt, and long-term impact on ag exports? Do you think you've addressed that enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, Connor, and Keith works those international markets. What we're seeing is a ballooning of debt around the world. And China is a country that is able to do this. But because they're a very, Connor, authoritarian type of government, they can suppress very, very quickly. And so as what we would have to do is sometimes when you take out, for example, in the United States, Connor, we're taking on a lot of debt and it's devaluing the dollar. And so what happens is when you devalue the dollar, it increases ag exports. So it will be the yuan or the renminbi in relationship to the dollar, and of how it might impact U.S. ag exports to their country. But you got to remember, they aren't the only ones that we export. Can I just tell you, I'm in the dairy area, and what's real interesting, Mexico is our big importer of dairy products. But you know what the problem is in dairy? With Mexico, their economy is struggling right now. Same way we've got to watch on China. And hey, got to tell you this one, Connor. They came out with big headlines the other day. China is the only growth economy in the world other than Vietnam, maybe Singapore, growing at 2%. And I go, wait just a minute here. I says, China historically has been growing at 6 to 14%, 2% feels like a recession. So we not only got to watch their debt, their value, their currency, but whether how fast their economy is growing, because that will dictate how much their emerging middle class will take our agriculture exports. So that's a long answer to that question out there. We got any others?
Yeah, and actually, David Holzhauser followed up on that and kind of wanted you to speak a little bit more about the how the authoritarian government in China, allowing them to make rapid shifts, like as you mentioned, how does that affect the entrepreneurship and I guess even the rising middle class?
It's real interesting, David. You're right, spot on. What happens is you saw China go from 2 up to 16%. It's currently 16% of the GDP today. They were able to do it because of authoritarian capitalism. Here's what happens. We're going to put our money here, here, and here. And if you disagree, then, well, I'm not saying you're going to disappear as a citizen, but you're suppressed. And so what's happening is you get rapid growth, David, but it's going to be interesting to see if the growth is sustainable. And in any authoritarian, see, the Chinese watched the Russians. And as the Russians moved more to capitalism, the problem is the old KGB gained all the spoils. And so what they've been trying to do is filter it out through society. But you've got an unequal society in China. The urbanites are doing pretty well. The 800 million people that live in rural China, they're still living on, we talk about $15 an hour. They would be, more than happy to have $2 to $3 an hour. So what's happening there is authoritarian capitalism will give you that big boost. And President Xi is kind of touting that this is the new economic system around. But in my belief, it suppresses entrepreneurs. And back to your point, David, David, I got to tell you, America was built on small business and entrepreneurship, which agriculture is out there. And I'm very, very concerned about that kind of moving forward here in the United States. So again, they don't have quite the entrepreneurs, but you'll see the big headlines. Some of their tech people will pop out there. But why they had the rapid growth was authoritarian capitalism.
Interesting.
Oh, guess what? Connor, guess what?
What?
We got a tease on, I want explanation on the 78% rule.
I did see that. I did see that.
Shelley took the bait, okay? Shelley Barlow, okay? I know that family well. Matter of fact, they have been very instrumental in helping me at Virginia Tech over the years. Their family was not, I got to give them a shout out. 79% rule is real simple, Shelley. 1910, that's when my dad was born. You go from 1910 to 2019, 79% of the time, farmland has either increased or remained stable. Isn't that amazing statistic? It's almost 80%. But you start World War II, 1941, and go out to 2019, 88%. Isn't that phenomenal? 88%. But here's the key, and there's a lot of young people. When I was lecturing over at Ag Tech, Connor, this fall, I think 20 of the 24 students in my daughter-in-law's class were thinking about going back and going back to the farm. And they asked me, is land a good investment? And you know what my response is? Absolutely, but it's going to stretch you. And for example, we had a young man's grain farmer up in Maryland. It might have been southeastern Pennsylvania. You know what he has? A side gig, welder. He's good at it. And one of the things is he uses that extra income to go over and finance and do the debt service on his farmland. And I often talk about when you buy farmland, it's about like having a baby. You know you can't afford it, but you find a way to do it and work around it. And by the way, some of you've got 6 children out there, so you've had to do that 6 times. It's good listening to or observing the chat room. By the way, Tommy, I noticed, is teaching students at the Eastern Shore. Hey, by the way, Tommy, good for you. And teach them good value systems out there. Let's put it this way. I'm often asked, Connor, and I'm going to allude to this, about the future of university education. One of the things that I think is not everybody has to go to college to be successful. There's nothing wrong with vocational and technical school. Matter of fact, I really see some of that education shifting out there. And so, and particularly for our ag industry to operate this equipment, to be able to work on this equipment, it takes a very skillful type of individual. So Tommy, keep up the good work out there and keep her going.
Going off that, do you actually see COVID-19 changing the university education model long-term? Yeah,
I really do. And I could see this coming beforehand. And again, I hope I'm not a crotchety old retired professor, which I am a crotchety old retired professor. But one of the things that I really see coming, Connor, in the future, instead of earning degrees, we'll earn certificates, and you'll put a portfolio of certificates. You'll do deep dives in specialty areas. I see more online, but again, Purdue University, Liberty, University of, or Arizona State University, of course, they started moving online. I'm a believer, yeah, you can do some stuff online, but I think the blended approach, having some online coming together for an educational experience, for example, maybe young people would study international marketing and trade, and then guess what? Keith Long, who's had a number of years of experience, he would take them on a European tour for 4 or 5 weeks. That's your blended type of educational approach that I see. And the whole issue of college debt and university debt, unfortunately, we build up a lot of that debt, but we also, I'm probably going to hit some people here. We put a lot of new buildings up too, and hired a lot of administrators. We got to get back to our research extension and teaching and having a nice balance in there. So it's going to be turned upside down, no doubt about it. And you got to remember, these black swans create a lot of disruption out there. Hey, Connor, tell me, got to ask you, Where'd you go to school?
Uh-oh. I actually am, and I'm one of the few that is an alumni of the University of Virginia here in the association.
Hey, by the way, I'll just give you, I got to tip my hat to Tony Bennett. I think he's a great basketball coach and seems to have good value systems.
Yeah.
It was one of my 4 schools for my doctorate. I was looking at Cornell, Harvard, actually Arizona, and University of Virginia. So I looked at it, and I got to be very candid with you. I taught at the Virginia Banking School there for a number of years, and always enjoyed going on that campus. And I think it's a great school. But again, I'm an out-of-stater. So I have an open mind, Connor. Look out.
That's good. Virginia Tech certainly had a good game last night. They were quite impressive.
Yeah, and you guys really hit Syracuse the other day. I don't know what happened. I guess it was too cold up in Syracuse for Virginia Tech, but he's doing a nice job with the program here at Virginia Tech. I got to give him a shout out. But I'm just going to tell you on basketball, Seth Greenberg set us back when he didn't bring the Curry boys in. So that's my personal bet. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, Rob Puckett has a good question about the U.S. dollar and how the overall commodity sectors for investors, how that possibly hedge against inflation.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you're going to see is another 5, 10, 15% devaluation of the U.S. dollar. And Robert, because we are printing the stimulus checks, et cetera, the key question is going to be, is it going to create inflation? Right now, inflation has been subdued, but inflation is really in our economy, whether it's medical or whether it's buying farm machinery and, some of the other costs. But when they put the basket of goods together, they have to look at many types of, products and services out there. Let's put it this way. Land is a great hedge against inflation. And sometimes, the commodity sectors, of course, are tied right to that. Where you'll see inflation pick up, maybe it won't be on the consumer goods, but it will be on manufactured goods, oil and energy. Robert, I'm watching oil and energy right now because I hope we don't get back into that trap, because I lived through many of those oil shocks. And it's very disruptive to the psychology of the consumer, but it's very disruptive to your cash flow budgets on out there. So I hope we keep stability there. So to answer your question, it's definitely out there. Okay, Connor?
So you mentioned about investing in land as a way to kind of hedge against inflation. What are some other reasons, that investing in land is a good idea, given that higher taxes are on the horizon, and capital gains taxes have been talked about coming back. So what do you think other kind of incentives or reasons to invest in that land would be?
Well, and can I throw one out? In Manitoba the other day on a webcast, I suggested that you take some of your investment and invest it outside of land if you're a farmer. And boy, one of the Manitoba producers, this was actually in the FACE program, he got all upset about it. And he goes, well, Dr. Kohl, I know my Manitoba farm ground a lot better than I do Wall Street or Bay Street. They call it Bay Street there in Toronto. And my response was, well, I go, sir, good point. But I says, would you put all your investment in one stock? And he goes, oh, of course not, Dr. Kohl. And I go, well, if you just invest in land, you got one stock. He goes, oh, and I kind of hit him on that. One of the things that I find is it's a great tool for diversification of your portfolio. But in farmers and ranchers, you probably need to invest some outside of the farmland out there. And the other thing is, it's a good hard asset. And by the way, farmland, if you go back and look at those 78, 88% rule, Connor, it's real interesting. Farmland gives you return and capital appreciation just behind small cap stocks over the years. And so it's been a real good investment. Here's the other element on farmland. One of the things that's real interesting is sometimes it's what's under the ground, water, mineral rights. Sometimes it's location, location, location. And so, by the way, Connor, I got to give you this trivia question. I'm going to check you out, put you on the spot. Who's the biggest landowner in the United States of America? Who do you think it is?
It's Bill Gates, isn't it?
Yeah. Hey, by God, you're putting that UVA education out there. And if you look at it, where's he investing in farmland? That Mississippi Delta. Why? It's flat, black, and fertile next to a river. That's transportation to the global markets. Where else is he investing? You'll look at the profile. A lot of it's where there's water rights, mineral rights, et cetera, et cetera. Now, my response on Gates is I don't like to see too much too much investment by those folks because it creates serfdom agriculture. Okay, I'm being very blunt. That's me speaking. It's not your association speaking or anything like that. But it is a good possibility. You know what the other thing is? Sometimes you can go out and enjoy it. Sometimes you can't go out and drive around on your stock or kind of like that. And so sometimes you get those other little things in life that are very, very important. I noticed Glenn had a question there, Connor. How can one protect against the possibility of interest rate, over the next 5-10 years? Folks, this is one of the things. This is Glenn, great question. What you have to do is, everybody says, should I lock in on my interest rates now? I come back to you and say this, do your cash flow and say, what happens if interest rates increase 1% or 2%, okay? How does it influence your cash flow? And the other element, when you're looking at it, there's not much possibility interest rates are going to go down too much more, but there's a possibility that they're going to go up. And by the way, if we go from a 5% or 5.5% rate to a 7.5% rate, that's a big increase. And I come from the era, Connor, way back, where interest rates went from 6 to 21%. It was very devastating. And so many of your lenders who are sponsors of this program here today have products out there where you're able to lock in. And as you got the 5 to 10 year arm or 25, that's up to you. In other words, you have to look at how sensitive is my business to an interest rate increase, and what is my debt situation going to look like 10 years from now, 25? And you say, that's too far out there, but it depends, Glenn, where you are in that business cycle, because early on, you usually carry more debt, then it'll go down. But then if you bring another partner in, sometimes that'll increase. So you kind of have to vision kind of where you're at. But first of all, do the objective sensitivity test to see how vulnerable you are. That's your first sniff test, and then kind of vision where your business might be. But you know what your third test is, Connor?
What's
Back
that?
to Glenn. If you can't sleep at night because of the interest rate increase, then it's against his internal compass. Okay, so sometimes you gotta bring the human aspect back in there. That's a great question.
Absolutely. So you've talked a little bit of, oh wait, we got one coming in. So what's on the horizon for carbon credits, and will the market ever achieve value to the landowner? Meaningful value to the landowner?
That's a great question. And by the way, on all these webcasts, Connor, that I've been doing, not only here, but some of them that we've been doing worldwide. And by the way, when we do worldwide webcasts, we have the Australians and New Zealanders. They're on from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning. I don't know how they stay awake, but they do it. This is a theme all across the globe now. And one of the things is you're going to have to watch this real closely. In other words, what practices, you'll have to do a cost-benefit analysis. What practices can you integrate into your farming operation that may be able to give you these carbon credits? Here's what I see. We're writing government stimulus checks now. And think about this, Connor. Government payments as a percent of net farm income on the FinVin data for grain farms, 95% in 2019. I see a shift of those government payments coming more toward these type of incentives, and I see it picking up steam in 2025 to 2030. And by the way, some of the practices that you will be doing, you'll want to be doing, because one of the things is, here's the same way we'd like to have healthy water, healthy soil. So I really see it picking up. But if any of you took my class at Virginia Tech, the old famous partial budget, added cost, added reduced returns, added returns, reduced cost. A good old simple partial budget, when these credits come out, it will kind of give you that balance to see if it's profitable. And here's what you're going to find. It might be profitable for one farm, might not be for another farm. And so the degree of profitability will vary. And again, your management orientation may have to be in there. So Connor, that was a very, very good question you got there. Somebody wanted me in person, that being Grayson, so he could have Homestead Creamery ice cream and milk samples. By the way, Kirby, tell me what your favorite flavor is. You know what I like? Hey, Connor, you ever had Homestead Creamery product?
Of course.
Have
Absolutely.
You? Well, let's put it this way. You're okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
My favorite flavor is espresso chocolate chunk. And by the way, my dogs love espresso chocolate chunk. Oh, butter pecan. By the way, Robert, I got to tell you, butter pecan, it's real interesting. It's our most expensive product to produce on the ice cream side. And Robert, I apologize for this, but generally speaking, older people like butter pecan. And believe it or not, women like butter pecan. And so it's kind of interesting how you'll see. By the way, Connor, what do you think our favorite, what's the most popular flavor?
I would imagine chocolate, probably.
Yeah, it's second. It's second. Actually, it's vanilla.
Okay.
And it's it'll really surprise you. The old standard vanilla ice cream is still the major one. Boy, this is good interaction that we've had here. Hey, Connor, back to question and answer, but I like the chats in here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you talked about younger people getting into the farming operations. What are some of the keys for people that want to get into an operation that might not necessarily come from farming family?
Okay, I'll hit farm family and then I'll hit the non-farm family. For a farm family, what you got to do is make sure that the farm is profitable before you're going back in. And by the way, don't look at a Schedule F, because we manipulate revenue and cost to make it, so we show losses, but do the accrual adjusting. Second, you got to do an assessment of the land, the facilities, like your grain bins, your equipment, and your machinery, and the management mindset that's there. And then third, if you're going back into a family business, you got to know what your role is going to be, and how the older generation may phase out, how you may phase in. Those are three critical elements. But a lot of people say, well, you can't start from scratch. Listen to this, Connor, 21% of American farms and ranches have no next generation to come back. And so one of the things that we're finding, young folks that want to enter agriculture, they find somebody that, would like to carry their legacy on through someone else. But if you're starting from scratch, it's very important to do the B plan, the business plan. In other words, thinking about your vision, your goals. You have to do, if you do a projected cash flow, it's 80% of the business plan, because you got to think through production, marketing, finance, debt service, operations. And then I got to give a piece of advice for a young person. Make sure you get a good mentor. And all of us, can I just share with you, at Virginia Tech, I had great mentors, many from farm credit and the banking industry, but there was a guy by the name of Bob Reynolds who taught extension here at Virginia Tech. Actually, a mentor was Wayne Purcell, Dave Kenyon, some of the folks, because we all had an interest in teaching and education. But one of the things is having that mentor to bounce ideas off, very, very critical out there. So again, you can start from scratch, like my welder kid up there. His spouse was very good at marketing, and so they put their talents together. They started from scratch, and one of the things is, I think she taught school. He was a welder. They used that off-farm income to build their operation. They're organic grain, Connor, and they were able to, build and evolve their business, through a little bit of sacrifice. I got to tell you though, whether it's going back into a family business or whether it's a startup, that family living budget is just as important as a farm budget, because you're going to have to make some, sacrifices on out there. Well, any other questions coming through? I notice we're down to how many minutes?
We have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah. Okay, Alicia just pointed over the desk at me. I've got 5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Well, so you talked a little bit about, the younger generation being in the office a little bit more, on the computer, doing a little bit more of the marketing side of things. Do you feel that there are any significant or noticeable trends between business IQs across the generations? Yep. And how they might differ?
Yeah, and this is a great question. And okay, Connor, I got to make the division line. What's considered older and younger?
In farming, an older farmer.
Yeah.
What is 70s? No.
Yeah. I'd be considered young. No, I'm joking. But over 45 and under 45,
okay.
Make the division. Here's what we have found. For the folks over 45, we got the 25, 50, 25 rule. 25% will have a high business IQ. 50%, oftentimes they'll be in about 25 to 30, and then the other 25 will be less than 25. However, when we look at the younger generation, under 45, 50% of them will have a high business IQ. 30% will be right in between. 20% will be a low business IQ. And here's the reason. What we find is oftentimes the younger generation is carrying more debt. They have to be accountable to someone else. And so they know that they got to follow a marketing plan. They got to fill out a cash flow and do, some of the things that are on that business IQ chart. And so that is kind of how I found it. However, I found some very progressive older generation out there that had, very high business IQ score. I have found some very low business IQ scores on the younger generation. Sometimes those are the ones that go back into the family business, and sometimes maybe they've had it handed to them on a platter, and so they just don't have that not tension, but that pressure to perform out there. So we do see the variation out there. Very, very big question. And by the way, that business IQ score, it's one of the fastest tools. I've got a number of lenders. Matter of fact, there's a lender south in North Carolina. They had 97 of their producers actually fill it out when they came in for their loan renewal request. So I'm kind of glad to see that one being used. Well, hey, we're getting down to the time here, and
yep. So I have one final question. If no one else in the chat has any. I think would be a good one to kind of end it on, if you don't mind. I guess, what are some of the best management practices that you see, so let's just say the top third of producers consistently doing or operating in those senses?
I got to tell you, Connor, perfect question to end, and it's a great way to end. I find them, they're incrementalists. I don't know if there is a word, but what they do is they try to, it's like a basketball team. It's like Tony Bennett, or our coach down here at Virginia Tech on the basketball side. They try to incrementally get better all the time. They're looking for new, and again, I just find them just tweaking. That's one. The next thing is they balance the numbers with their gut feel. And it's kind of the balance between the head and the heart. The head's the number, the heart's the passion. And they know how to find, they use both of them. And they don't get caught with analysis and paralysis of analysis, yet they just don't get caught making an emotional decision. But I come back to the third element. They know the power of people, having good people around them, whether it's that crop consultant, whether it's facilitator, whether it's their agricultural lender, and they know how to leverage themselves, and they're always inquisitive, trying to get better. And so those are my Babe Ruth, the three characteristics that I see commonly as I've worked 6 decades in this industry. Well, Connor, that has sure been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on where the future leads, and really the whole past 2020 as in general. So thank you for being here.
And it's been an honor, and thanks to all the sponsors and everything, and thanks for the comments that are coming in. Really appreciate it. We're all in this together. Agriculture is a great industry.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now we'll take a 5-minute break to refresh. Pour yourself a coffee, maybe stretch, and we'll hear a word from 2 of our presentation sponsors, Manel and Carmuse. Thank you.
We hope you guys enjoyed Dr. Kohl's presentation. Just answering a question in the slides, yes, the slides will be available and a replay of this will be available. We will email that out to you all following the conference in a few days. We will now begin the annual meeting portion of this year's conference. Again, we appreciate you being part of this year's virtual format and remind you to utilize the chat feature to vote or comment throughout the meetings. And be sure to stick around, we don't want to lose you, for your chance to win one of the two $200 Amazon gift cards that are door prizes sponsored by Axis Seed and Fraser Quarry. Before we get started with our annual meetings, we'll pause from a word from our sponsor, Ag Risk Management. Call Tyler Franklin to preside over the 2021 Virginia Soybean Association annual meeting. Tyler?
Good morning. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to attend this. I'd like to call the 2021 annual membership meeting of the Virginia Soybean Association to order. I'm Tyler Franklin, serving as your first vice president this year. I know this isn't our usual format, so we'll try to be as brief as possible. As we get started today, please utilize the chat section to vote as well as make your comments. First up, Rob Puckett will present the minutes of the 2020 annual membership meeting and the annual treasurer's report through a video he pre-recorded.
Good morning. This is Rob Puckett, the treasurer of the Virginia Soybean Association, and I want to thank you all for being here today. The minutes of the 2020 annual membership meeting were included in your annual report that came in the link this morning. Due to this year's virtual format, we'll dispense with the reading of the minutes, but please be sure to look over them in your packet. You will also find copies of last fiscal year's statement of activities in the annual meeting packet, also in the email this morning. As of last statement, the checking account balance is $121,569.77. The commingled money market savings balance was $155,648.82. And the VSA money market savings account balance is $27,239.59. The annual audit was conducted by Joyner, Kirkham, Kohl, and Robertson, certified public accountants. Copies of this annual audit, as well as all other financial statements, are available for Virginia Soybean Association members' review at any time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, is there a motion to accept the treasurer's report as read? So moved. Is there a second? The motion has been made and seconded to approve the treasurer's report as read. All those in favor vote aye in your chat box. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Due to this year's virtual format, I'll now stand in for Tommy Hines and for this year's membership update. Currently, we have 177 members of the Virginia Soybean Association. Now, I'll ask Gail Terry, our communications contractor. She'll present on behalf of the Board Management Committee. Gail.
I would like to present the association with the recommendations for the Board of Executive Committee for 2021 and 2022. President, Tyler Franklin. First Vice President, Adam Davis. Secretary Treasurer, Rob Puckett. Chairman of the Board, Mike Bryant.
Thank you, Gail. Is there a motion to accept the Board Management Committee's report? So moved. Is there a second? Second. The motion has been made and seconded to accept the Board Management Committee's report. All those in favor vote yes in the comment section. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Congratulations and good luck to the 2021 and 22 VSA Executive Committee Board of Directors. And now I'll ask Gail Terry to come back up here and read the annual report of the President.
At this time, I'll be reading the annual report of your 2020 VSA President, Mike Bryant. Mike wasn't able to be with us today in person due to a last-minute work obligation. A copy of this letter can be found in the annual report packet included in your email this morning. VSA Annual Report from the President. It seems that in most years, as we get older, time speeds up, but in 2020, I think it slowed a bit. In March of 2020, right after this meeting and the Commodity Classic, who could predict that they would be the last in-person events for 2020? I thought that being president was going to be smooth. We had hired an executive director, and she was doing a good job. I had no idea how many conference calls and hours of planning would be involved thanks to the pandemic. It seems that everything that was planned in 2020 either didn't happen or was changed 3 times. The Virginia Soybean Association and the Board of Directors have continued to have meetings and work through these challenging times. We were not able to attend any events after March, so we had to come up with ways to educate and advocate for soybean farmers in Virginia. We gave additional scholarships to deserving Virginia students and are working on a new, more user-friendly website to make it easier to promote virtual learning. In a more positive light, we have had a bull market at the end of 2020 and have an opportunity to price at a 7-year high. We are starting 2021 with plenty of moisture. Let's hope that everyone has a good growing season. We are very adaptable folks, no matter what challenge. It has truly been an honor to serve this past year as the Virginia Soybean Association president. I would like to thank the staff and board for all of their hard work and dedication. I especially need to thank Rachel for keeping me straight. I wish all of you a safe and prosperous growing season. Mike Bryant, 2020 President, Virginia Soybean Association.
Thank you, Gail. At this time, I'd like to recognize the 2020-2021 Board of Directors. I'd like to thank these individuals for their time and dedication to the Virginia Soybean Association. Mike Bryant, Brett Whiteman, myself, Adam Davis, Rob Puckett, David Barnes, Jonathan Chilton, David Coleman, Garland Comer, Glenn Dye, Mike Ellis, Hoskins Henley, Tommy Hines, Ryan Horsley, Jeff Hula, Nick Moody, Brad Monahan, Kyle Sturgis, Craig Geesey, David Holzhauser, and Phil Hickman. We'd also like to offer special recognition to Hoskins Henley for his continued service as he terms off of our board this year. Hoskins, you'll be receiving this award via mail, and we can't wait to see you again in person soon. Thank you for everything you've done as a part of this board. Our Executive Director, Rachel Gresham, will now give a brief overview of this year's VSA activities.
Guys, as Mike alluded to in his letter, it has been one heck of a year. But on a positive note, moving forward, Commodity Classic, as I'm sure you all have heard, is going to be in person this year. Is going to be virtual this year. So registration is officially open as of this week. It's actually free to the first 500 farmers. So commodityclassic.com, and I'll email a link out later this week. Moving along to 2020 highlights, again, we didn't get to do a lot in person, but wanted to kind of let you guys know what we were able to do. Educational supplies were distributed. We were really impressed by the ingenuity of schools and local extension staff. We supplied soy activity books, soy crayons, and soy lip balm, as well as other supplies, just like in previous years, to school events, many of which were drive-through, and extension outreach events at local farmers markets, and more. We actually had one group of middle school students that did a virtual goodie bag to local fourth graders in their schools, so I thought that was pretty cool. Additional scholarships, in addition to the scholarships we typically give, your membership dollars went towards an additional $2,000, totaling almost $5,000 for youth studying agriculture here in Virginia. Sale of Champions, even without the state fair, Sale of Champions continues, so the association was still able to support that this year. And after everything shut down in March, we did have one in-person event this fall. Shout out to Halifax and Charlotte County's extension folks. They did a great in-person socially distanced field day that Gayla and I were able to be part of, so we're so excited to do that. Office changes this year. Please screenshot this address, and I'll also make sure I email this out. We officially transitioned our offices and our supplies, so please note that we have a new P.O. box that is a Goochland P.O. box this year. Moving right along, just wanted to make sure you all were aware of a resource. As part of the Virginia Soybean Association, you all also have dual membership into the American Soybean Association, which is the national arm. And with that, they do a EB newsletter each week with a lot of policy information and just information that might be helpful. So I wanted to make sure you all had the link to that, soygrowers.com. It's the EB newsletter full of great information. Mike asked me to pass this along to you all, the Virginia Farm Voluntary Agriculture Best Management Practices Inventory. I'll email this out to you all, but just so you're aware, this is something that is important as we move forward to kind of get an inventory of what is going on and what conservation practices are actually already happening. Ag Expo this past year obviously was not able to happen in person, but Extension did do a great series of videos that we'll make sure is on our new revamped website here soon. But please, please save the date, August 5th, 2021, Corbin Hall Farm. We are so excited to see you in person, and fingers crossed that that can still happen. So what did we do this year? We took a lot of steps back, realizing that we need to kind of revamp some of our information. So the bulk of the year was spent on content planning and creation, how to better distribute information and resources to our members, you all, strengthening educational partnerships, and building a database of professional photos. So shout out to Sarah Newcomb, who took many of the photos that you see in this presentation today and that are on some of our promotional materials moving forward. So with that, coming soon, we will have an updated website very, very soon, hopefully within the next 6 weeks, with a better, simple, clean design. It will be mobile friendly, and we'll have landing pages for events. I know you all have a hard time kind of finding some of our events, so it'll all be in one location. It will have just member-focused resources, as well as educational information, scholarships, things like that, and much, much more. So vasoybean.com, we'll do a rollout in 6 weeks. In closing, I just wanted to give a thank you to the Virginia Soybean Board of Directors who have worked hard this year, kind of thinking through a lot of the events that we've done and what we could do in a socially distanced world and how to do things better moving forward. Obviously, thank you to the Virginia Soybean Board for much of the funding that they have for the work that we do with checkoff dollars. And a special, special shout out to our executive committee, Mike Bryant and Rob Puckett, being your president and secretary treasurer, answered many, many questions that came up during this year as we had to kind of shift over and over, as Mike alluded to. And also Brett Whiteman, Tyler Davis, Tyler Franklin and Adam Davis is a newcomer to the group. These guys have worked tirelessly on your behalf during a challenging year. So thank you. Thank you to you all, and we look forward to seeing you all in person soon. I will now call Tyler Franklin forward to make a presentation.
On behalf of the 2020-2021 Virginia Soybean Association Board of Directors, I'd like to present Mike Bryant with this plaque of appreciation for his service as president. In a challenging year like we had in 2020, Mike has done a fantastic job, and we appreciate all your help, Mike. Looking forward to serving as your president for this coming year. 2020 offered more challenges in one season than I ever hope to see in one year again. Fortunately, for many soybean farmers, August rains delivered critical moisture to a soybean crop that led to some exceptional yields statewide. These yields, along with the recent rally in prices, has given producers much needed optimism looking forward to 2021. So I want to put 2020 behind us. I want to focus on building our association's membership base. I want to extend our level of involvement within the industry and grow our impact on Virginia agriculture as a whole. And I plan to drive the value of our association to producers all across the state so that we can come together and build a stronger association. In general, the public is poorly educated on modern agriculture practices, and our nation is extremely divided right now. And our challenges as farmers seem to be increasing each year. It is more important now than ever to come together and help educate our consumers as well as our representatives. We've got a lot of challenges and a lot of work to do this coming year, and I look forward to facing these challenges with you. Seeing no new business in the comments section, I now declare the Virginia Soybean Association annual membership meeting adjourned. We can't wait to see you all in person again, hopefully soon.
Thank you, Tyler. We will now pause for just a moment to hear from our presentation sponsors, Nutrient Ag Solutions and Virginia Department of Agriculture, before resuming with the 2021 Virginia Grain Producers Annual Meeting.
We're for agriculture, for growers, doers, whatever it takers. We're for hard work that leads to success through the blood, the sweat, and the tears. We're for doing things with purpose, aspiring to the next what's next. We're for believing in the greater good, to turn what ifs into why the heck nots. We're for the little guy with big guy dreams. Integrity, sacrifice, and absolutely no tolerance for excuses. We're for accountability and keeping promises, leveraging global resources to make a local impact. Passionately driven, fiercely loyal. We're for agriculture. We're for you. Nutrient Ag Solutions, leading the field.
Hello, I am Jewel Bernal, Commissioner of the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. As many of you know it, it's VDAX. VDAX is very pleased to recognize our grain and soybean industry, and we're super happy and excited to sponsor this year's virtual Virginia Corn and Soybean Annual Conference. Last year was a tough year on many fronts. But one bright spot was the grain and soybean markets rally in late 2020. Monthly average prices for November were the highest since 2013, with soybeans mostly 30% higher, corn 8% higher, and wheat 17% higher than November 2019. Lower production in South America due to dry weather and good domestic demand supported these prices, but price advances were due primarily to increased export sales to China. Speaking of export markets, I am pleased to introduce VDAX's new Director of Marketing and Development, Rob Davenport. Rob brings many years of international marketing experience, including years at Sours brand.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernal. Agricultural products play a large role in Virginia's economy, and world events can dramatically impact the corn and soybean industries. VDAC's mission is to assist Virginia's producers and processors with navigating the challenges associated with domestic or export activities. I look forward to meeting and working with each and every one of you. Please feel free to reach out to me if you need my assistance or if you have any questions regarding marketing and development.
Okay, before we move on, I want to take a moment to congratulate Dr. Jewel Bronow, who was nominated last week by President Biden to serve as the next Deputy Secretary of Agriculture for the United States Department of Agriculture. Congratulations, Commissioner Bronow. We're very proud of you. I will now call the Virginia Grain Producers Association's President, Joey Barlow, to the podium to preside over our annual meeting.
Thank you, Leslie. I would like to call the annual meeting to order for the Virginia Grain Producers Association. Normally, I would call attention to the annual report sitting at your seat, but this year is so different, we emailed these documents. If you did not receive these documents, please contact Connor or Leslie. Now I'll call on Candace for the reading of the minutes, unless I hear a motion to dispense.
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor? Motion passes. Now I'll pass the podium to our treasurer, Ronnie Gill, to present the 2020 financial summary.
Thank you, Joey. You have this package in your email. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights here. Our financials are of review quality by the firm of Lane and Associates PC. Our internal monthly bookkeeping and financial management services are handled by Harris, Haughty, and Johnstone CPAs. And what you see on your screen here, we appreciate and the checkoff funding that we received from the Virginia Corn Board and also the Virginia Small Grains Board. For the fiscal year 2019-2020, ending June 30th, 2020, our checkoff funding from the Corn Board was $134,000. For the Small Grain Board, $39,000, for a total checkoff of $173,000. The total unrestricted association income was about $37,400. Our unrestricted association expenses were $23,500 approximately. We maintain 3 account balances. One is our regular operating checking account that has a balance as of June 30th, 2020 of $135,531. Our investment account is with Davenport. That balance as of June 30th, 2020 is $208,701. We also maintain a scholarship fund, and that has a balance of $2647 as of June 30th, 2020. We had 2 scholarship winners from this past year out of 27 applications, so we were real pleased with that. That was the year end, June 30th. We've gone 6 months into the new year, and this slide gives the checkoff funding that we've gotten beginning with the June 2020 through June 30th of 2021. Our Corn Board funding was $149,000. Year-to-date expenses about $50,900. Small grain funding from the Small Grain Board $39,000, and expenses of about $20,000. We're on budget with all of our funding there, and you also see the $52,000 in unrestricted revenues from our association and the year-to-date expenses of $17,382. That is our summary of the Treasurer's report. If there's any questions, you can put those in the chat box, and if I don't see any, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you, and I will move that we accept the Treasurer's report for this year.
All right. A motion has been made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Right. Motion passes. Thank you. It was a challenging year, to say the least, from our Small Grains Field Day going virtual to Ag Expo being canceled. COVID has definitely put a damper on some of my ideas to move this organization forward in a positive direction. On a positive note, we did have a very successful golf tournament, thanks to the participants and sponsors. A special thanks goes to Piankatank River Golf Club and the Fleets for being great hosts. Thanks to all my fellow board members and members of Virginia Grain Producers Association. And now I will turn it over to Leslie for our annual report.
Thank you, Joey. Okay, what a year it has been. Crazy doesn't seem the right word, but it was definitely crazy. So I'm just going to start the report with a little, some slides about the production for corn and Virginia wheat and Virginia barley, and just compare them to the last few years. So as you can see, our acres planted for corn were up, and the acres harvested were up. Our production, we had about just shy of 54,720,000 bushels of production. So that gave us about 144 bushels per acre. Our wheat production, which will not come as a surprise to many of us, was down as far as acres planted and harvested. We averaged about 62 bushels per acre in 2019. The barley, our acres planted remained the same as the previous 2 years. Our acres harvested were down. The production, our bushel production was down, and we averaged about 65 bushels per acre. As far as our exports, our current numbers from 2018 for agriculture, we exported just shy of $3 billion. That is still lower than our record high in 2014, which was $3.35 billion. New numbers are usually announced at the governor's agriculture and trade conference, which is usually held in Richmond in March. I am confident that that is going to be virtual, if anything, so we should hear those numbers then. The Virginia Grain Producers Association has 4 strategic focuses that we concentrate on. We concentrate on the market infrastructure, our communications, membership and support, as well as advocacy and education. Some of our project highlights in the past year on the state policy priorities, we still are very concerned with water quality, pesticides, and ethanol. We work with our federal policy priorities, the Chesapeake Bay, again, pesticides, free trade agreements, and alternative fuels. Our membership numbers right now stay steady at 200. Again, it was challenging this year not being able to go to the various events and talk about our association and hopefully, sign on, especially our younger members, our students. But hopefully, when we can get back to some kind of normal and those events can start to take place in person, we can get those numbers higher. Some more project highlights. We do make nominations for our state Virginia Corn Board as well as the Virginia Small Grains Board. We make sure that we continue to be active with the NCGA and the U.S. Grain Council as well. Again, ethanol is important in the corn industry, and the Virginia Grain Producers did partner with the Maryland Grain Producers Association, Virginia Clean Cities, the USDA, and other stakeholders for a nearly $5 million ethanol infrastructure partnership. Through this partnership, Virginia now has 61 fueling stations across the Commonwealth. The benefits are monumental to Virginia's grain industry. For example, a gallon of E85 uses 8.5 times more ethanol than E10. So we will continue to grow that market as much as we can. Of course, the past year and COVID and that kind of halted our efforts, but hopefully we will get back on track with that. Just to give a little recap of the past year, last February we did have our annual conference, and it was held in Richmond at the Westin Hotel. We did continue to have our 1.5-day format. It was a challenging conference. We unfortunately had we had lower attendance than in past years, and it was challenging for our sponsors. They were frustrated due to the lack of attendance, and Rachel and I and our boards could not blame them one bit. So after the conference, we met with our joint commodity committee, and we were on the way of planning a fabulous event. We were going to shorten it to one day and have lots of interaction, engaging things, and just make it the type of event that people would want to come to. And then the COVID pandemic hit, and as we have heard many times, we had to pivot and change direction. So here we are, virtually. We are at Meadow Event Park, where we were going to hold the live event, and hopefully we will all be back here next year in person. So what a year. Our first event in this COVID virtual world was our 2020 Small Grains Field Day. It was held on May 21st. It was due to be held in person at our Eastern Virginia AREC Center, and it was going to honor Dr. Carl Griffey and his years of service at Virginia Tech, because he did retire at the end of 2020. However, due to the pandemic, we did have to make that virtual, and Dr. Oakes and his team and Connor and I met at the AREC Center a few weeks before the event and went through all the field plots and allowed Dr. Griffey the time to explain all of his hard work and showcase some of his varieties. We had good attendance for that first virtual event. I think we averaged about 75 live attendees. We did post the videos on our website, and we probably had over 1,000 views once it was said and done. So for our first virtual event and a slight hacker issue, I think that event went off very well. And then we moved into our 2020 Ag Expo, which Rachel touched upon in her presentation. Our committee tried so hard to make that event happen. We restructured, we reconfigured, we tried to do everything that we could imagine, but then just the numbers this past summer and everything that was going on, it was just decided the safest and smartest thing to do was to cancel the event. We were very fortunate that we had a bunch of our exhibitors let us keep their deposits for 2021. We did have a handful that wanted refunds due to the cancellation. So as a result, each association took a financial hit on that Ag Expo, which we hope we will recoup in 2021 and years forward. Virginia Tech generously offered to shoot a promotional video of the event. Those links have been sent out in our newsletters, and I will make sure that it is on our website, because it is a beautiful video shot of all the field plots, as well as Bleak House Farm, and showcasing the Downing family and their history at the farm. So please take a moment to watch that. Rachel did mention that our 2021 Ag Expo is going to be held at Corbin Hall Farm in Middlesex County, and we are very much looking forward to that. I have learned that that's kind of where the Virginia Ag Expo got its beginning, so it'll be nice to revisit that history. We did manage to have our golf tournament in person. That was one thing that Joey and Connor and myself, as well as the board, we really wanted to make every effort possible to have that event. And Pianki Tank Golf Club and the Fleet Brothers and their team just could not have been more generous with their time, with their ideas, and most importantly, making sure that every member of our association that showed up to play golf that day, every sponsor, everyone felt safe and secure, and it was so nice to see just so many smiles on everybody's faces. We were just so glad to actually see each other personally and not through a computer. We had 13 teams play. We had great sponsors. I believe we had 13 total sponsors, and it was really a financial success for the association, so that was a nice little bright spot in our COVID summer. So now we are going to talk about our 2020 yield contest winners, and I'm going to turn that over to Connor Miller.
Thank you, Leslie. So the 2020 Virginia Wheat Yield Contest winners. First place, Philip Haney II from Haney Farms, Northumberland County. He came in with a yield of 121.6 bushels an acre, with Pioneer 26R45. Second place, PJ Haney, also Haney Farms, Northumberland County, with a yield of 119.8 bushels per acre, also growing the Pioneer 26R45. In third place, Justin Welch, Welch Farms, also Northumberland County, 118.9 bushels an acre, USG 3318. Fourth place, we have Evan Perry of Corbin Hall Farm, Middlesex County, 117.3 bushels an acre, growing also the Pioneer 26R59. A few honorable mentions: Ronnie Russell from Corbin Hall, where the upcoming Ag Expo will be this coming year, as well as Alan Welch and Shane Richmond. Alan is from Northumberland County, had a yield of 105.3 bushels an acre with USG 3316. Shane Richmond from Shenandoah County had a yield of 96.1 bushels an acre. It was growing the Mercer MBX 17M245. It's a mouthful. So the hard wheat yield contest winners this year: Katie Meyer from Laurel Springs Grains, Richmond County, with a yield of 88.7 bushels an acre, growing Vision 45. Second place, Josh Long from Brandon Long Farms, Montgomery County, 82.7 bushels an acre, also growing Vision 45. Third place, Dan Brand from Brandon Long Farms, Montgomery County, 70.4 bushels an acre, and also Vision 45. Now this year, the conventional non-irrigated corn yield contest, Grayson Kirby from Mechanicsville won, growing Axis 65D28. And that yield was 262.488 bushels an acre. Second place, we had Ryan Horsley from Virginia Beach, growing DeKalb DKC 7027 with a yield of 233 bushels, or 233.5013 bushels. No-till non-irrigated, our yield winner this year for a state contest was Ben Williams from Swoop, Virginia. Now he was growing the DeKalb DKC 6435 RIB. His yield was 286.44 bushels an acre. Sorry, my computer just shut off. Third place, Guy Gokenauer from Woodstock, DeKalb also, with a DKC 6869 RIB with a yield of 271 bushels. The strip ridge-till non-irrigated portion or state yield contest, first place, Monty Heatwell from McGaheysville. He was growing Pioneer P1077 AM with a yield of 273.6493 bushels. Second place, Timmy French from Woodstock, growing DeKalb DKC 7027 RIB with a yield of 267.6967 bushels an acre. And finally, the no-till irrigated, we might actually have one more after this. The no-till irrigated first place is J.R. Newcomb from Hanover, Virginia. And he was growing with the Pioneer P1197 AM. That yielded 279.4428 bushels. In second place, Robbie Newcomb, also from J.N. Newcomb & Sons Farms in Hanover, Virginia. He was growing it with a Pioneer P1903 YHR with a yield of 272.3945 bushels. Third place, Joseph Stevenson from Wakefield. He was growing DeKalb DKC 6618 with a yield of 270.3079 bushels an acre. And so now to the strip ridge-tilled irrigated. First place, Anita Heatwell from McGaheysville, growing the Pioneer P1847 AML with a yield of 269.6996 bushels an acre. Second place, Levon Heatwell from McGaheysville, growing the Pioneer P1077 AM with a yield of 266.93 bushels an acre. I'm sorry, Monty's in. So third place, Gerald Heatwall from McGaheysville. And Gerald had a yield of 248.9229 bushels an acre, growing the Pioneer P1283 AM. Now the conventional irrigated, first place, Brett Whiteman from Mount Jackson, growing DeKalb DKC 70, 27 RIB. His yield was 282.8923 bushels an acre. Second place, Patrick Newcomb from Hanover was growing the Pioneer P1197 AM with a yield of 280 bushels an acre. And finally, third place, Robbie Newcomb from Hanover, also growing the Pioneer with the Pioneer P1903 YHR with a yield of 274.6250 bushels an acre. And that concludes the yield contest winners for this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor, and congratulations to all of our winners. Okay. As Ronnie mentioned in his Treasury report, we had a fabulous year for our scholarship. We received 27 applications, which I believe is a record number for the association, and awarded 2 of our applicants with $1,000 scholarships. Both go to Virginia Tech, and they were just great applications. Everyone was very well deserving. We already have our forms online on our website. The deadline is April 30th, so please make sure that you get your students to apply, and it really is a great scholarship. Okay. And then my last order of business is just to talk about our officers for the upcoming year. Our incoming president is Wayne Kirby. Our first vice president is Tom Nixon. Our second vice president is Bill Henley, secretary Candace Wilson, treasurer Ronnie Gill, and our past president will be Joey Barlow. Our 2 NCGA representatives are Joey Barlow and Tyler Franklin. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it back over to Joey, and he will introduce our incoming president.
Thank you, Leslie. First off, I want to say thank you for allowing me to serve as your president this year. This year, I have the honor to pass the gavel to a man that needs no introduction. He has been active in our industry for a lifetime. Although he will have a hard time filling my shoes physically, I have no doubt in his ability to run this organization. Congrats to Wayne Kirby, your new president.
Thank you, Joey, and we just want to take this moment to thank you for your service to the organization this year. As we've mentioned several times already, it was quite a trying year, but you did an outstanding job, and we really appreciate your efforts. We're winding down to the end of this annual conference, but a couple of comments I would like to make in closing. Dr. Kohl kept telling us in his presentation to watch for, watch for, watch for. Well, we as farmers, most of us, we just want to farm. We have a hard time watching for. So that's why we have these executive directors of these organizations that represent us at the General Assembly and other places, and working with other organizations. That's why your membership is so important. And I just want to say to you, those who are watching, talk to your friends, even though you may not participate in person in some of these events or some of these things that come up. It's important that we have representation from our organizations to the ideas that are coming down the pike. Everybody, we all want to thank everybody that loves a farmer. Well, we're finding out that everybody doesn't love a farmer, so that we're considered to be sometimes a lot different than we perceive ourselves to be. So we need, when these bad ideas take root at the General Assembly, we need people who can be there to knock the legs out of it if it's a bad idea, if you will. And that's why your membership is so important. We all pay checkoff dollars. Checkoff dollars cannot be used to lobby. We have to have your membership. We have these golf tournaments, things like that, to raise money so that we can have representation. And whether it's the Grain Producers Association, Soybean Association, it's important that you pay your dues and be a member so that we can have that representation. Again, in closing, we just want to thank you all for taking time. I hope y'all will give us your comments as to how you thought this went. There's a lot of effort been put into it. It's a lot different than we've ever done before, and we hope you feel that it was time well spent. If there's no other business to be conducted, then I call this meeting adjourned. Have a good day and good luck in 2021.
Check.
Thank you so much, Wayne. And of course, things were going a little too smoothly, going backwards just a bit. I'm so sorry I skipped over our yield contest winners this year. So I just want to congratulate the 2020 yield contest winners for soybean. In first place for full season crop is Adam Davis with Adam Davis Farm out of Halifax. Second place, Randy Seal, Double S Farm out of Rockingham. Third place, Nelson Gentry out of Spotsylvania. And as far as double crop goes, first place goes to Joseph Stevenson, 5 Ash Farms over in Sussex, and second place goes to E.G. Fleet, Fairfield Farms in Middlesex. Their information will be loaded up on our website, so I apologize, guys. Congratulations. Well, we just want to thank you all for your participation in this special virtual edition of the 2021 Virginia Grain and Soybean Annual Conference. And now, as promised, we really appreciate you all hanging in there with us today virtually. We'll do our final door prize drawing for 2 $200 Amazon gift cards, sponsored by Axis Seed and Fraser Quarry. And the winner is Grayson Kirby. Congratulations, Grayson. And finally, our second winner is Glenn Dye. Congratulations, and thank you all for participating today. Gentlemen, your gift cards will be mailed to you. This completes the 2021 Virginia Grain and Soybean Annual Conference. We appreciate all of you attending today and hope you've learned as much as we have, especially from Dr. Kohl. Before we leave, please join me in once more thanking the Virginia Commodity Checkoff Boards and our sponsors for making this event possible. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you in person for 2022, we hope. Have a great day, guys.